Most of us have two lives, the life we live and the unlived life within us. Between the two stands resistance. Today's episode is basically revolves around the work of Steven Pressfield, and we'll get into that more, but the ultimate question that we're going to attempt to answer in this episode is, when we're struggling in life, how do we know if we need to rest, change course, or face resistance head on? And we're also going to discuss some other quotes from Steven Pressfield at the end of the show, just for fun. So, all right, but first we need to talk about what resistance is, because I've already said the word a couple times, and you're probably sitting there thinking, what the heck is this resistance thing that she's talking about? So resistance is an idea that was put forth by Steven Pressfield in his book, The War of Art. And he writes that most of us have two lives, the life we live and the unlived life within us. Between the two stands resistance. So resistance is basically going back to what I talked about in the introduction, your self-doubt, your procrastination, your self-sabotage. Those are some examples of resistance. And he describes resistance as resistance is the most toxic force on the planet. It is the root of more unhappiness than poverty, disease, and erectile dysfunction. I had to put that in there because I just love, he puts in his writing, he always has these little funny things in there. But the reason that resistance is the most toxic force is because he says, Steven Pressfield says, to yield to resistance deforms our spirit. It stunts us and makes us less than we are and we're born to be. So basically it's standing between you and what you want to achieve in life. And basically it's what's causing you to settle for an unfulfilling life. And to give you an idea of some of the activities, so he noted these activities elicit resistance. And these are just some. He actually listed a ton of different activities, but he says any act that rejects immediate gratification in favor of long-term growth, health, or integrity will elicit resistance, or any act that derives from our higher nature instead of our lower nature. And some examples are the pursuit of the arts, starting a business, starting any diet or exercise plan, spiritual advancement, overcoming bad habits or addiction, education of every kind, or starting a family. So those are some examples. Hopefully that paints kind of a picture of what resistance is. Do you have anything to add to that before I...
I heard him say that, for every dream that you have, resistance radiates off that dream, because he loves to use a lot of analogies. Like he said, the dream would be the tree and resistance is the shadow. It's the shadow that comes off everything.
Okay, the shadow off of the tree.
Off of the tree, which is your dream. But it's interesting because I think it's so true. Resistance is really, it's always there, but you just don't really think about it. You know, it's interesting.
Yeah, and he goes into more detail in The War of Art. He goes into more detail about how and maybe we were going to talk about this later because you were going to talk about how it kind of manifests itself, but how it can lead to so many horrible things. And he even says, now this might be a stretch, but Adolf Hitler was a painter, or he had taken on some painting. He wanted to be a painter, but he said, you never see one of his paintings because he didn't pursue that. And because he didn't pursue that, or he actually felt somehow caught whatever what am I trying to say? Starting the whole Nazi revolution or whatever you call it. That's not the right term, but somehow easier to him than sitting down. And it's like, so I mean, that's an extreme example, and who knows even what it was, but he used that as an extreme example of how it can really show up in horrible ways in people's lives.
Yeah, wow, what a powerful analogy.
Yeah, I know.
Like, if only Hitler had taken up painting.
Yeah, like it was easier to start World War II than to sit down and paint. Like, well, I'm sure there's some truth to that. As crazy as it sounds. Yeah. But so I thought too, we could maybe give some examples of resistance in our own lives. Before the show, we were kind of talking about this, but the biggest resistance I face is every morning when I get up. because I am the type of person who never wants to get out of bed for some reason, or very rarely. I shouldn't say never, but it's pretty darn rare that I actually want to get up out of bed. And even if I've had a full night's sleep, even if, you know, it's still, when it's time to get up, I just fight that for some reason. And so like right away in the morning, I'm facing resistance. And then the other thing, I think just the overlying thing that I deal with in my life that causes a lot of resistance for me is just trying to control situations. And I don't think I necessarily am controlling when it comes to people, although maybe I am more than I think I am.
I haven't noticed that, no.
I don't think I'm controlling in that way, but I'm definitely very controlling over my own life and then trying to have things go a certain way, or like have my day planned out a certain way. And then if something comes up, like as simple as like a phone call, like all of a sudden I'll feel resistance to even like answering that phone call because it's going to get in the way of my day. And if I don't, but maybe that's like the phone call is going to change my life if I answer it, you know? And so like I can kind of just trace back as I was thinking about this question before the episode as like, or this discussion topic, I was just like, you know, that sums up all of my resistance is caused by trying to control situations, really. So
interesting. Yeah. Control would be a big one. And I think, it probably would feature for me as well. Like, I think probably the best example I would have is writing my first academic publication. And, you know, he talks about the different stages of resistance. You know, getting started's a big one. Which was interesting because this publication that I wrote, getting started was quite easy. Like, I was very enthusiastic about the subject matter. I just wrote. Well, actually, I suppose if I look at the starting point with it, you know, in the past, getting started was very difficult for me. Like, I would want to write the perfect sentence to get it started. So what I did this time was, I'm just going to write. And even if I know that the words that are coming out of me are crap, you know, it's all right. I'm gonna get started, and it helped me overcome that first hurdle of resistance. But then the resistance manifested in much more problematic ways later when, you know, we started to revise the drafts, and the probably the biggest one that nearly caused me to just bow out of the whole PhD thing, which right now sounds absurd, but it was when I had to completely overhaul and rewrite the paper because one of the other authors said, "Nah, this is just not working. It's not the way to frame this framework," you know. And just the thought of starting again and was just like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, and that was just clearly resistance being like, nah, you're not good enough, you know. And it was this fear of, you know, what if I rewrite it again and then I have to do it again and again and again? Like, can I do this? I don't think I can. But pushing through that resistance was one of probably the biggest accomplishments of this year for me.
For sure.
Because I was like, I don't know how, but I found the energy and the willpower to push through what was incredibly difficult at the time. So, you know, I feel like that's probably a bigger accomplishment for me than even submitting the article to the journal, you know. So
But that reminded me just of what this quote that I had here, because he said, oh, what exactly did he say? Any act that derives from our higher nature instead of our lower will elicit resistance. And so that reminded me, because rewriting the paper was calling on you to derive from your higher nature and to force yourself to improve and grow and learn. And so then the resistance popped up because it didn't want you to. We'll talk about that next, of kind of where the resistance comes from, possibly, and why it tries to sabotage you. But yeah, I know, as you said that too, I was thinking about that because I do resist starting new things. Like, even, and it's so silly because even if it's something that I've done before and I know, like, I'll take my accounting work, for example, because that's a little, like, in my writing work and this work, it's like, you're creating something. So you're never really doing something you've done before. But in my accounting work, I'm definitely doing things I've done before. And even then, sometimes I will feel resistance to it because there's that weird fear of failure, I guess, or I don't know. It's just really weird because it doesn't make sense. Like there's absolutely no reason I should resist it. But I think it's just we'll get to talk about this in a minute, but you know, it's kind of our default mode, unfortunately.
I think so, yeah. And I think, you know, the stakes are the highest, you know, in those points is like, you know, I don't know, you've just got to push through that, I think. Yeah. And it's really hard sometimes, but it just adds so much more flavor, I guess, to the experience you've had. And, you know, and you feel so proud of yourself when you can do it. It's not always easy.